beneath a lonely star. Jedediah settled onto the porch swing, the aged wood groaning a familiar tune beneath his weight. The evening air, still warm from the day's sun, carried the scent of drying hay and distant honeysuckle. Above, the first star of the night had pierced the darkening canvas, a tiny pinprick of silver. He knew its name, Polaris, the North Star, from his father, who had taught him how to navigate by the heavens. His father was gone now, like so many others. He closed his eyes, the star's faint light imprinted on the inside of his lids. He remembered nights like this with Martha, sitting right here, her hand tucked into his. She'd always been able to spot constellations he'd miss, her fingers tracing invisible lines in the sky. She'd laugh, a sound like wind chimes in a gentle breeze, when he pretended to mistake the Big Dipper for a lopsided spoon. God, he missed her laugh. The swing creaked rhythmically, a lonely counterpoint to the chirping crickets. 5 years. 5 years since the fever took her, leaving him with nothing but memories and a farm that felt too big, too empty. He'd tried to fill the void with work, with endless chores, but the silence in the farmhouse at night was a constant, aching reminder of what he'd lost. A flicker of lightning briefly illuminated the horizon, a jagged tear in the gathering gloom. Jedediah opened his eyes, the single star now joined by others, their light growing stronger. But there was a different light on the horizon, a restless, electric glow. A storm was brewing. He watched it gather, the clouds rolling in like a dark tide, swallowing the stars one by one. The wind picked up, rustling the leaves in the ancient oak tree that stood sentinel at the edge of his property. He could smell the rain coming, a sharp, earthy fragrance that tickled his nostrils. He thought about going inside, but the porch felt less lonely than the empty house. He stayed there, a solitary figure silhouetted against the encroaching darkness, until the first fat raindrops began to fall. With a sigh, Jedediah rose, his joints protesting with a series of clicks and pops. He still had to close up the barn for the night. The animals were already inside, safe and dry, but he liked to double-check the latches, make sure everything was secure. Old habits died hard. The wind howled as he crossed the yard, whipping his hair across his face. The rain was coming down in sheets now, blurring the world into a gray, indistinct mass. The barn loomed before him, a dark rectangle against the storm-tossed sky. Inside, the air was warm and thick with the scent of hay and manure. The cows lowed softly, their eyes reflecting the weak light from the single bulb hanging from the rafters. He patted Bess, his oldest cow, on her flank, and she nudged him gently in response. He checked each stall, making sure the latches were secure, the animals comfortable. He found a loose board in the back wall and made a mental note to fix it in the morning. He lingered for a moment, listening to the rhythmic breathing of the animals, finding a strange comfort in their presence. Satisfied, he turned to leave, pulling the heavy barn door shut behind him. He secured the latch, the metal cold and slick beneath his fingers. He didn't see the shadow shift in the corner, didn't hear the soft rustle of straw. He was too preoccupied with the storm, with the loneliness that gnawed at him, with the familiar ache in his heart. He hurried back to the house, the wind and rain lashing at him. He didn't know it, but huddled amongst the bales of hay, shivering and exhausted, was a woman whose arrival would change his life forever. He didn't know that the storm brewing outside was nothing compared to the storm that was about to break inside his quiet, predictable world. He simply walked towards the light of his porch, unaware of the secret that awaited him in the darkness. The crates in the barn. The barn reeked of damp hay, overlaid with a peculiar, metallic tang that prickled Jedediah's nostrils. He hacked, shielding his face as he crossed the threshold. The storm had punched a jagged maw in the roof, unleashing a cascade of water that transmuted the earthen floor into a slick mire. A curse escaped his lips as he contemplated the repairs, the prohibitive expense. He could scarcely afford sustenance, let alone mend a barn. That's when he spotted it, a hefty wooden crate, plunked down center stage, as incongruous as a grand piano at a hog roast. It hadn't been there yesterday, Jedediah swore. He traced the coarse grain of its surface. Barren of markings, devoid of labels, just raw, unpainted lumber bound by thick, corroded nails. From whence had it sprung? Had the tempest somehow ferried it in? The notion felt absurd. He circled it warily. It was ample enough to house, well, practically anything. Snatching a crowbar from its wall perch, his pulse quickened. He jammed the tool beneath the lid and levered. Timber protested, nails shrieked their lament, and at last, the cover relinquished its hold with a resounding crack. Jedediah paused, crowbar poised. He peered within. Initially, just impenetrable gloom. Then, his vision adjusted. Tucked away in the crate depths, cradled by a bed of straw, lay a woman. Asleep, her sable hair fanned across the bedding like spilled night. Her complexion was pallid, almost ethereal in the wan light filtering through the breached roof. Strikingly young, improbably so. Jedediah lowered the bar, his hand unsteady. He had anticipated something else entirely. Not this. Kneeling beside the container, his shadow encroached upon her face. She shifted subtly, a hushed sigh parting her lips. He observed the delicate sweep of her cheekbone, the subtle smudges beneath her eyes. Her attire was unassuming, a simple woolen dress coupled with a time-worn shawl about her shoulders. A calloused hand extended, hovering tentatively above her features. Should he rouse her? Who was she? And what prompted her presence within a crate in his barn? Lightly, he touched her shoulder. "Miss," he murmured, his voice a gravelly rasp. "Miss, awaken." Her eyelids fluttered open, revealing eyes wide and bewildered. The hue of dark chocolate, brimming with bewilderment and trepidation. She blinked, latching onto Jedediah's visage. "Where," she began, her voice languid with slumber and a curious lilt he couldn't quite place. She pushed herself upright, her gaze flickering around the barn, taking in the dilapidated condition of the structure, the fractured ceiling, the muddy expanse. "You're on my property," Jedediah stated, still reeling. "I discovered you, in that crate." She regarded him, her expression inscrutable. Then, she bolted upright, clutching her shawl tighter. Of slight build, she scarcely reached his shoulder. I am Anya Petrova," she declared, her voice wavering faintly. I am here to meet Jedediah Whitlock." Jedediah scrutinized her, his mind spiraling. Jedediah Whitlock. Himself. But he hadn't put in an order, for anything. He hadn't been expecting anyone. I don't follow," he stuttered. "There's been some blunder." Anya Petrova fixed him with a gaze of muted desperation. "Please," she implored, her voice scarcely audible. "The arrangement, the agency, they assured me," her voice faded as her eyes dropped to the soiled floor. "They said he would be here." Rain pummeled the barn roof, its rhythm intensifying. A glacial dread began to constrict Jedediah's heart. He observed Anya, the blend of hope and fear animating her features. He glanced at the crate, the straw, the sheer unlikelihood of the scenario. He comprehended none of it, yet one element loomed large: this woman resided in his barn, anticipating him. And inexplicably, he bore some responsibility. Anya's story. Burlap, coarse against her cheek, roused her. Anya's eyelids fluttered against the dim light seeping through the crate's slats, a painful awakening. A persistent throb pulsed behind her eyes, a sickly echo of the storm's fury. Every muscle screamed in protest as she shifted. Where was she? Not the cramped quarters of the ship, not any place familiar. Panic seized her lungs. "Hello," she rasped, her voice a dry whisper. "Anyone?" A shadow loomed, blocking the meager light. A man stood there, lanky and weathered, his face a mask of concern. Jedediah Whitlock. Impossible. She was destined to meet. "Are you hurt?" he asked, his voice a comforting baritone. Ignoring her body's complaints, Anya clambered out of her makeshift prison. A stumble almost sent her sprawling, but he caught her arm, his grip surprisingly gentle. "I am Anya Petrova," she announced, her voice gaining strength. "I'm to meet Jedediah Whitlock." His brow furrowed, etching deeper lines around his kind eyes. "I am Jedediah. But I wasn't expecting," his voice trailed off, thick with confusion. Anya felt her carefully maintained facade begin to crumble. "There's been a mistake," she admitted, her voice trembling now. "I'm a mail-order bride. But not for you." Jedediah's confusion deepened. He guided her to a wobbly stool by a workbench, urging her to sit. The barn air, redolent with the earthy scents of hay and horses, did little to soothe her fraying nerves. "Tell me everything," he said, settling onto an overturned bucket. Anya recounted her journey, the tortuous voyage from Russia, the fragile hope that had blossomed with each nautical mile. She spoke of her family, battling starvation through the brutal Russian winter, and her decision to answer a distant advertisement for a husband, a new life, in America. "The advertisement wasn't yours," she stated, her voice hollow. "It was for a man named Silas Blackwood. Here, in this town." Jedediah's eyes widened in shock. "Silas?" She nodded. "The ship, a savage storm caught us. We were nothing more than flotsam in its grip. My memories are fragmented, the endless rocking, the crushing fear. Then, oblivion. I awoke aboard a small fishing vessel. The captain said we'd been blown far off course, way north. He deposited me and others on the shore, promising the stagecoach would pass through. I had the address. The passage money. Everything. I paid the driver to bring me here, to Whitlock's farm." She hugged herself, shivering despite the barn's relative warmth. "He claimed it was late. He'd leave me at the door. He carried my trunk inside, and then he vanished. I must have drifted off, in the crate." Anya looked up at Jedediah, her expression pleading for understanding. "I have no one. Nowhere else to turn. I'm supposed to be with Silas Blackwood. But, everything has gone wrong." Jedediah absorbed her tale, his gaze unwavering, his expression thoughtful. Anya studied him, searching for any hint of judgment, anger, revulsion. She saw none. Only quiet comprehension. "Silas Blackwood," he echoed, his voice a low rumble. "He's not a good man, Anya." A cold dread coiled in Anya's stomach. "What do you mean?" Jedediah hesitated, his gaze falling to the dirt floor. "He's known for his violent moods. And for other things. He's not a man any woman would choose willingly." Anya's heart hammered against her ribs, a frantic drumbeat of fear. She had risked everything to escape one life, only to stumble toward another, potentially far more dangerous. The last embers of her hope threatened to die. "I don't know what to do," she whispered, her voice barely audible in the cavernous space. Jedediah lifted his head, his eyes meeting hers with resolute kindness. "We'll figure it out, Anya. You're safe here. For now." He rose, his movements measured and reassuring. "Come. You must be starving. I'll put on some coffee. And then, we can decide our next course." Whispers in town. The warm stew radiated through Anya, a fragile shield against the chill that clung to her bones. Jedediah observed her, the lamplight painting shifting patterns on her apprehensive face. He'd given her the loft above the barn, a humble sanctuary, stark yet spotless, light years removed from the suffocating confines of the shipping crate. "Get some rest," he'd rasped, his voice a low rumble. "We'll sort things out tomorrow." She nodded, each spoonful a small victory against the tremor in her limbs, yet the dread in her core persisted. Instinctively, she knew tranquility remained elusive. Dawn painted the sky with hues of rose and gold. Jedediah, citing errands, insisted Anya remain put while he ventured into town. "Just necessities," he muttered, avoiding her gaze. "Coffee, provisions, nothing flashy." But curiosity, like bindweed, had already taken root. Essie Mae, armed with her shopping list and an insatiable appetite for gossip, spotted Anya the moment she entered the mercantile. The newcomer stood near the fabric bolts, tentatively touching a length of faded indigo. Her striking looks, the thick plait cascading down her back, the unfamiliar cut of her simple dress, all announced her arrival in a place where lineages were meticulously catalogued. "Well, now, who have we here?" Essie Mae purred, her voice a syrup-sweet invitation laced with steel. Anya flinched, her eyes widening. I am staying with Mr. Whitlock." Essie Mae's brows arched skyward. "Jedediah? Harboring a woman? A young, exotic woman?" The conjectures, both salacious and captivating, churned in her mind like cream being vigorously whipped. "Jedediah, you say," she drawled, milking the syllables. "And what brings you to our little corner of the world, dearie?" Sensing the subtle hostility, Anya merely offered a polite, closed-mouth smile and turned back to the fabric. Essie Mae didn't miss the brush-off. Clutching her groceries, her mind already raced, a tapestry of rumors half-woven. By midday, the whispers had become a full-blown roar. Essie Mae, naturally, was the conductor, each iteration of the tale more vibrant than the last. Jedediah harbored a woman. A breathtaking woman. A woman shrouded in mystery. Some claimed she was an escapee. Others hinted at espionage. The bolder ones speculated she was a sorceress, intent on bewitching the town's husbands. These rumors weaved through the town square, past the clang of the blacksmith's hammer, and ultimately, to the shadowed veranda of Silas Blackwood's crumbling abode. Silas was carving a piece of wood, his movements ponderous, his eyes squinting against the sun's glare. A hulking figure, he carried himself with the weight of bitterness accumulated over years. Time had etched harsh lines around his mouth and dragged his eyes downward, lending him the aspect of a perpetually disgruntled mastiff. Old Man Hemlock, delivering Silas's scant supplies, cleared his throat, shuffling his feet nervously. "Heard Jedediah Whitlock's got himself a houseguest," he mumbled, avoiding Silas's simmering gaze. Silas ceased his carving. The only sound was the drone of flies near the decaying porch swing. "A houseguest, you say?" His voice resonated, a low thrum. Hemlock swallowed hard. "A woman. Young one. Foreign lookin'." He risked a quick glance. "Some folks are sayin'." "Sayin' what?" Silas's voice was now a soft menace. Hemlock stammered, sayin' she's lodgin' with him." A tick pulsed in Silas's jaw. He understood what the old fool dared not utter. He knew the gossip that slithered beneath every conversation. His promised bride. The woman for whom he'd forked over his hard-earned savings. The very same woman Jedediah Whitlock had purloined. The wood splintered in Silas's grip. He rose slowly, each movement deliberate, like a predator preparing to strike. "Where is she?" he demanded, his voice dripping with a glacial rage that made Hemlock quake. "At Whitlock's place," Hemlock squeaked, retreating. "That's the story." Silas uttered not another word. He pivoted and stalked towards his barn, the sinking sun igniting something gleaming and lethal in his grasp. The murmurs of the town had reached him, and they had stirred a slumbering beast within. Silas's claim. A plume of ochre dust heralded Silas Blackwood's arrival, a dirty flag announcing his presence. Behind the farmhouse, pinning up laundry, Anya felt her gut clench. It wasn't just the dust. The truck's engine emitted a throaty rumble, a sound laced with the barely leashed fury she detected simmering beneath the surface of Silas's letters. Jedediah emerged from the barn, wiping grime from his calloused hands. He narrowed his gaze at the approaching vehicle, his features settling into a familiar, protective sternness. The truck, an aged Ford, ground to a halt, scattering pebbles across the hard-packed earth. Silas unfolded from the cab, a stark figure silhouetted against the afternoon glare. He appeared taller than his photograph suggested, and gaunt, almost skeletal. But his eyes. They remained unchanged, cold, obsidian points of rage. He stalked toward Jedediah, boots disturbing the peace with each stride. "Whitlock," Silas rasped, the name a venomous word. "Where is she?" Jedediah stood firm, the rag bunched in his fist. "She's inside." "I suggest you leave." "Leave? She's mine. We have an agreement." Silas's voice, a dry scrape. "Anya Petrova is contracted to me. Deliver her." Anya let the damp shirt slip from her fingers. It landed soundlessly on the baked ground. She longed to vanish, to meld with the barn's weathered planks, anything to evade the looming confrontation. "That contract," Jedediah stated, his tone surprisingly level, "is defunct." Silas barked a harsh, mirthless laugh. "Defunct? You imagine you can simply disregard a legally binding document? I paid good money, Whitlock. Money I barely have, and I won't be swindled of what's rightfully mine." He closed the distance, invading Jedediah's personal space. Anya caught a whiff of stale liquor and dust emanating from him. "I'm taking her. Now." Jedediah didn't yield. "She's not chattel to be bought and sold, Blackwood. She's a woman, and she doesn't wish to accompany you. Her wishes are inconsequential." Silas jerked his head towards the house. "Bring her out." Anya couldn't endure it any longer. She approached them, her feet silent on the parched lawn. "Jedediah, it's all right." Both men pivoted towards her. Silas's gaze sharpened, raking over her, stripping her bare with his assessment. Jedediah's eyes held a complex blend of worry and resolution. "Anya," Silas began, his voice softening, becoming almost unctuous. "Come. We're going home. Home." The word turned to bitter dust in her mouth. Blackwood Farm. A place relegated to faded snapshots in Silas's increasingly unhinged letters. A place tinged with loneliness and, she suspected, something far more sinister. "Silas," she began, her voice trembling ever so slightly. I don't think." "Don't think? You needn't think, Anya. You put your name on the document. You gave your word. You owe me." His voice escalated, the veneer of civilization cracking to reveal the raw anger beneath. "She owes you nothing," Jedediah countered, stepping between them. "Not anymore." Silas shoved him, a brutal act. Jedediah stumbled backwards, catching himself on the split-rail fence. The swiftness, the unexpectedness of it, left Anya momentarily stunned. "You can't shield her indefinitely, Whitlock," Silas growled. "I have every right to her. And I'm not leaving without her." He faced Anya again, his gaze shifting between pleading and threatening. "Come on, Anya. You know this is the right thing." Anya's eyes flicked from Silas's desperate, enraged face to Jedediah's concerned one. She was a cord stretched tight, nearing its breaking point. Her heart hammered against her ribs, a frenzied rhythm echoing the tempest within her. The laundry line groaned softly in the breeze, the only other sound puncturing the charged silence. The sun beat down, creating a dizzying effect. She squeezed her eyes shut, seeking clarity amidst the chaos. She envisioned Jedediah's gentle touch, his quiet generosity, the way he regarded her, not as property, but as an individual. Then Silas's words echoed again, his acrimony, the palpable darkness that seemed to cling to him. When her eyelids fluttered open, her gaze locked on Jedediah. She offered no words, but her decision was unmistakable. A midnight escape. Anya watched the dust motes dance in the single shaft of moonlight slicing through the barn. Jedediah hadn't returned after taking Silas to the house. Each creak of the ancient timbers was a hammer blow against her dwindling hope. When he finally appeared, his face was etched with a grimness that mirrored her own fear. "He's not going to let you go, is he?" Anya whispered, the question barely audible. Jedediah shook his head. Silas is convinced you're part of some arrangement. A contract. He wants you to stay." Anya's breath hitched. "But I didn't agree to any contract. I don't even know how I got here." Panic clawed at her throat. "What are we going to do?" Jedediah sat beside her on the hay bale, the rough twine scratching against his worn trousers. "We're leaving. Tonight." The relief that washed over Anya was so profound, it nearly buckled her knees. "Leaving? Where will we go?" "Anywhere but here," he said, his voice firm. "I'll pack some supplies. We can take my old mare, Bess. She's not the fastest, but she's sturdy. We'll head west, towards the mountains. Maybe find work in a mining town." Hope flickered, fragile as a candle flame. "Can we really get away with this? Silas seems unstable?" Jedediah finished for her, a sardonic edge to his voice. "Yes. But he also seems to think he owns this place, and everyone on it. He's wrong. We'll be gone before he even realizes it." The next hour was a flurry of hushed activity. Jedediah moved with practiced efficiency, gathering dried meat, a loaf of bread, and a small water skin. He pulled a thick woolen blanket from a trunk and hesitated, then added a worn leather-bound book, its pages brittle with age. Anya watched, her heart pounding in her chest, feeling a strange mix of fear and exhilaration. She rummaged through her own meager belongings, finding a small silver locket, the only thing she recognized as her own. She clutched it tightly, a silent promise to find her way back to herself. Jedediah returned with a small sack slung over his shoulder. "Ready?" Anya nodded, her throat too tight to speak. They moved silently towards the barn doors, Jedediah leading Bess from her stall. The mare nudged him affectionately, her warm breath puffing out in the cool night air. As Jedediah adjusted the saddle, Anya noticed a dark figure silhouetted against the far corner of the barn. Silas. He stood motionless, his arms crossed, a predatory stillness about him that sent a shiver down her spine. He must have been watching them all along. Jedediah saw him too. His jaw tightened, but he didn't speak. He helped Anya onto Bess's back, then swung up behind her. "Hold on tight," he muttered. Silas didn't move, didn't shout. He simply watched as Jedediah urged Bess forward, the mare's hooves drumming softly on the packed earth of the barn floor. As they passed him, Silas's lips curled into a chilling smile. "You think you can just run," he said, his voice low and dangerous. "You signed a contract, Jedediah. Both of you. And contracts must be fulfilled." Jedediah ignored him, urging Bess into a trot as they burst out of the barn and into the moonlit fields. Anya clung to him, her heart hammering against her ribs. She dared to look back, and saw Silas standing in the barn doorway, a dark, malevolent figure against the pale moonlight. He wasn't chasing them. Not yet. But Anya knew, with a chilling certainty, that he would. This midnight escape was only the beginning. The hunt had begun. Standing her ground. The dust cloud Jedediah's wagon kicked up barely had time to settle before Silas Blackwood's buggy screeched to a halt, blocking the road. Silas jumped down, his face a thundercloud darker than any storm brewing on the horizon. He planted himself squarely in front of Jedediah, radiating menace like heat from a forge. "Where do you think you're going, Whitlock?" Silas's voice was a low growl, barely audible over the chirping of crickets in the nearby fields. He ignored Anya completely, fixing Jedediah with a glare that could curdle milk. Jedediah swallowed, his hand instinctively tightening around Anya's. "Just heading into town, Silas." "With her?" Silas spat the word out like a curse. His gaze flicked to Anya, lingering on her rumpled dress and the way she huddled closer to Jedediah. "That's my property you're carting around, Whitlock. Contracted and paid for." Anya flinched but held her ground. Jedediah, however, straightened his shoulders. "Anya is not property, Silas. She's a person." Silas laughed, a harsh, grating sound. "Don't get sentimental on me, Whitlock. You know the terms. She belongs with me." He took a step closer, his shadow falling over Anya. "Come on, girl. Don't make this difficult." Anya's breath caught in her throat. She looked from Silas's hard, demanding face to Jedediah's worried one. Fear clawed at her, but something else, something stronger, began to bloom within her chest, a fragile seed of defiance. She thought of the warmth of Jedediah's hand, the kindness in his eyes, the quiet comfort of his farmhouse. "No," she said, her voice barely a whisper. Silas stopped, surprised. "What did you say?" Anya lifted her chin, drawing strength from Jedediah's presence beside her. "I said no, Mr. Blackwood. I am not going with you." The words came out stronger this time, resonating with a newfound conviction. Silas's face darkened. "You ungrateful little." He took another step forward, reaching for her. Jedediah stepped between them. "Leave her alone, Silas." "Get out of my way, Whitlock," Silas snarled. "This doesn't concern you." "It concerns me very much," Jedediah replied, his voice surprisingly firm. He stood his ground, though Anya could see the tension in his jaw. From the corner of her eye, Anya noticed a figure approaching. It was Essie Mae, her apron flapping in the breeze, her eyes wide with curiosity. More figures followed, drawn by the commotion. Soon, a small crowd of townsfolk had gathered, their faces a mixture of concern and morbid fascination. "Anya doesn't belong to you, Silas," Jedediah continued, his voice gaining strength with each word. "She can choose her own destiny." Silas's gaze swept over the growing crowd, his anger visibly escalating. He seemed to realize that a public scene wouldn't serve him well. He lowered his voice, though it was still laced with venom. "You'll regret this, Whitlock. Both of you." He turned back to Anya, his eyes narrowed. "Think carefully, girl. This farmer can't offer you anything. I can give you comfort, security." Anya shook her head, her gaze unwavering. "I don't want your comfort or your security. I want to choose my own life. And I choose to stay with Jedediah." The silence that followed was broken only by the rustling of leaves and the distant lowing of a cow. Essie Mae gasped, her hand flying to her mouth. The other townsfolk murmured amongst themselves, their eyes darting between Anya, Jedediah, and Silas. Silas stared at Anya, his face a mask of disbelief and rage. He opened his mouth to speak, then seemed to think better of it. He spat on the ground, turned on his heel, and stormed back to his buggy. He whipped the horses into a frenzy, the buggy disappearing down the road in a cloud of dust and fury. Anya slumped back against the wagon seat, her legs trembling. She had never spoken to anyone like that before, never dared to defy someone so powerful. She looked up at Jedediah, her heart pounding. Jedediah smiled gently, his eyes filled with relief and something else, something she couldn't quite decipher. He squeezed her hand. "Are you all right, Anya?" Anya nodded, a small smile playing on her lips. "Yes," she said. "Yes, I think I am." A new dawn. The silence after Silas's pronouncements hung heavy, broken only by the frantic chirping of crickets. Then, Essie Mae stepped forward, her ample bosom puffed out like a pigeon's. "Well, I never," she declared, her voice booming across the yard. "Trying to shame Jedediah like that, after all he's done for this town? And that poor girl. Showing up here like that, not knowing a soul." A murmur of agreement rippled through the crowd. Jedediah watched, stunned, as neighbor after neighbor voiced their support. Old Man Hemlock, usually tight-lipped and grumpy, spat a stream of tobacco juice and said, "Silas, you've gone too far this time. You lost fair and square. Leave them be." Even Mrs. Abernathy, the town's most notorious gossip, chimed in. "Honestly, Silas, you're acting like a spoiled child. Jedediah's a good man. Anya seems sweet as pie. Let them have their happiness." Silas's face contorted with rage, but the tide had turned. He sputtered, attempting a retort, but the chorus of disapproval drowned him out. Defeated, he finally turned and stomped towards his carriage, the wheels crunching on the gravel as he sped away. As the dust settled, Jedediah found himself surrounded by well-wishers. Hands clapped him on the back, and words of encouragement swirled around him. He caught Anya's eye, and a hesitant smile bloomed on her face. He gently took her hand, his calloused fingers intertwining with hers. The first sliver of sun crested the horizon, painting the sky in hues of rose and gold. He led Anya away from the crowd, towards the dew-kissed meadow. The air was crisp and cool, carrying the scent of wildflowers and damp earth. They walked in silence, their footsteps muffled by the grass. Reaching the center of the meadow, Jedediah stopped and turned to face her, the rising sun illuminating her face. "Anya," he began, his voice rough with emotion. "I know this is unconventional. But after everything that's happened, I can't imagine my life without you. Will you marry me?" Anya's eyes widened, tears welling up. She reached up and touched his cheek, her fingers trembling. "Yes, Jedediah," she whispered, her voice thick with emotion. "Yes, I will." Without another word, he pulled her close, holding her tight against him. The warmth of her body was a comforting presence against the morning chill. He kissed her then, a tender, hopeful kiss that sealed their promise. They returned to the farm, hand in hand, and Jedediah sought out Essie Mae. "Essie, Could you? Would you help us get married? Now. Essie's eyes widened, her mouth dropping open. She recovered quickly, her face splitting into a wide grin. Married? Now. Oh, Jedediah, you old romantic. Of course, I'll help. Let me gather the others. Within the hour, the townsfolk had gathered again, this time not in anger, but in celebration. Someone produced a simple white dress for Anya, and Essie Mae fashioned a bouquet of wildflowers. Jedediah stood beneath the ancient oak tree in his best suit, his heart pounding in his chest. As the first rays of sunlight broke through the trees, Anya walked towards him, her face radiant. Old Man Hemlock, surprisingly, officiated, his voice gruff but kind. He spoke of love, commitment, and the importance of community. Jedediah and Anya exchanged vows, their voices trembling with emotion. They promised to love and cherish each other, through good times and bad. As they sealed their vows with a kiss, a chorus of cheers erupted from the crowd. The sun rose higher in the sky, bathing the farm in a golden light, a new dawn breaking not just for the world, but for them as well. Love blooms on the farm. Silas Blackwood vanished without a word. No farewells, no justifications. He simply hitched his swayback mare to the ramshackle wagon he called home and guided it away from Harmony Creek, the setting sun casting long, violet shadows in his wake. He left a trail of unpaid bills, unfulfilled promises, and the sting of public scorn. He didn't glance back, but his absence resonated with a profound emptiness. Anya watched him depart from the farmhouse porch, Jedediah's hand a reassuring presence on her back. No triumph warmed her, only a bleak empathy for the broken man Silas had become. She knew the taste of desperation, perhaps more intimately than most. The following dawn arrived sharp and clear, the air alive with the scent of clover and dewy earth. Jedediah was already in the barn, coaxing milk from Bess, the rhythmic shush of the stream into the pail a grounding sound. Anya joined him, slipping into Jedediah's oversized gloves, her hands lost within the worn leather. He guided her, showing her how to cradle the teats, to invite the milk with the right pressure. Her first attempt ended with a splash across her face, met with Jedediah's booming laugh that echoed through the barn rafters. Easy does it, little bird, he chuckled, wiping her face with a soft cloth. Bess has a mind of her own. Anya proved a quick study. She mastered milking, learned to churn butter, gathered eggs still warm from the nest, and tamed the unruly vegetable patch. She came to know the wildflowers that painted the meadows, the haunting call of the whippoorwill each night, the comforting warmth of sun-baked earth between her toes. She absorbed the rhythm of the farm, the cyclical dance of sowing, nurturing, reaping, and repose. Jedediah, in turn, discovered Anya's story. He learned of the bleak orphanage in Minsk where she had spent her formative years, of brutal winters and meager meals. He learned of the dreams she cherished, a life awash in sunlight and joy, dreams that seemed impossible until she awoke in his barn. He realized that beneath her quiet demeanor resided a resilient spirit and a bottomless well of affection. Their days demanded toil, but their evenings offered solace. They would settle on the porch swing, watching fireflies ignite the twilight, Jedediah reading aloud from well-worn novels passed down from his mother. Occasionally, Anya would murmur ancient Russian lullabies, her voice gentle and melodic, spinning tales of distant lands and forgotten deities. One baking afternoon, while mending a section of dilapidated fencing, Jedediah stopped, wiping perspiration from his forehead. He gazed at Anya, her cheeks flushed with effort, her eyes alight with vitality. He saw not a purchased bride, not a stranger delivered in a crate, but the woman he had grown to cherish, the woman who had rekindled the flame in his weary soul. He let the hammer fall, crossed the distance between them, and tenderly swept a stray tendril of hair from her face. Anya, he declared, his voice thick with emotion, will you marry me? Truly marry me, not just to rescue you from Silas' shadow. Tears welled in Anya's eyes. She reached up, her fingers tracing the weathered lines of his face. I began to wonder when you would ask, she breathed. Their wedding took place in Harmony Creek's modest church, now blessed by the goodwill of the townspeople. Mrs. Higgins crafted a magnificent cake, and even Mr. Abernathy, the town's infamous grump, managed to smile. The ensuing years unfolded with peaks and valleys, laughter mingling with tears. They constructed a life together, stone upon stone, mirroring the solid foundation of their farmhouse. Children arrived, 3 robust sons and 2 radiant daughters, each a testament to their enduring bond. Decades drifted by like autumn leaves on the wind. The farm flourished, the fields abundant with golden grain and plump produce. The Whitlock family expanded, grandchildren arriving to fill the farmhouse with the exuberant chaos of youth. One mellow autumn evening, Jedediah and Anya relaxed on the porch swing, watching their grandchildren frolic in the yard. The air held a certain chill, the foliage a tapestry of vibrant hues. Jedediah, his hair now frosted with silver, his face mapped with wrinkles, clasped Anya's hand, his touch still sending a familiar warmth through her. "Remember that morning in the barn," he reminisced, his voice raspy with age. "When you first woke up in that crate?" Anya beamed, her eyes sparkling with memory. "How could I ever forget? Never imagined I'd find love quite that way," Jedediah confessed, gently squeezing her hand. Anya nestled her head against his shoulder. "Sometimes," she murmured, "the most improbable journeys lead to the most exquisite of destinations." The joyous sounds of children at play filled the air, a symphony of love and belonging. The farm, once a symbol of Jedediah's solitude, was now a sanctuary of warmth and kinship. And Anya, the mail-order bride who arrived in a crate, had discovered a home, a family, and a love that blossomed as vibrantly as the sunflowers bordering the fields. Their love story, rooted in a desperate arrangement, had evolved into something extraordinary, a testament to the tenacious power of the human heart.